Hello, God bless you. I'm going to open up in prayer real quick and then we'll get started with tonight's Bible study. Heavenly Father, I come before you this night, God. I just want to thank you for another day of life. Thank you for waking us up this morning, God. I just want to thank you for all that you're doing in our lives, God. Thank you as our children are back in school now. I thank you, God, in advance for their protection, God. I pray a hedge of protection around all of our children, God, and protect them in their schools and protect their friends, God, and let our children be an example, God, an example to the world, and let them shine their light, God, and let the world, their new friends that they make at school this year, God, notice something different about them, God, and that something different is you. And we just thank you for all that you're doing in our lives, God, and I just pray that you speak through me tonight, God, that it always be your words, and never mind that somebody receive what you have for them tonight. Not what I have for them, but for what you have for them tonight, God. And I just thank you for everybody who comes across this video, whenever that may be. In the name of Jesus, amen. Amen. So the title of tonight's Bible study is God's Children Are Not Victims of Their Circumstances, right? You know, many times in life, we can feel like we are the victim of our circumstances, right? And we can, start to get disheartened and start to feel sorry for ourselves, but God's children are not victims of their circumstances. Life-changing moments, we've all been through them, right? Life-changing moments are extremely difficult. You lose a loved one, whether you saw it coming or didn't. It's extremely difficult. It many sometimes it's a shock, and that's obviously extremely difficult to process. And other times, you saw it coming. You had as much time as possible to prepare, but it's still a shock, right? It's still a shock. It's a life changing moment when you lose someone unexpectedly, whether it be a spouse, whether it be a parent, a sibling, a cousin, an uncle, an aunt, a child, that's, I mean, it's all difficult, so life-changing moments are extremely difficult. When the unexpected happens, it can knock us down, right? It can knock us down. Even the strongest get knocked down by unexpected things that just happen in life. Life happens, unfortunately, and tomorrow's not promised. And God has his plans, God has his reasons, God has his ways, and because we are human, it's extremely difficult for us to understand that 99% of the time, actually no, 100% of the time. Even if you trust God, you're still like, what's going on? You kind of like Habakkuk, right? It's like, I don't get what's going on, but I'm gonna trust you anyways. So I think that's the next Bible study I'm gonna be doing that, or I don't know. It was the last one I did, but that sounds familiar. Like, I don't know what you're doing, I don't know what you're up to, but I'm gonna trust you anyways. That's basically what was going on in the book of Habakkuk. So when unexpected happens in life, it knocks us down. Sometimes we're down a little longer than we should be, and other times we get back up quick, but yet we're still dragging, right? We're still dragging our feet. I know I drug my feet for a whole year after the unexpected loss of my father. I remember sitting there all day in the room, just with him. He had been he'd been gone for 2 hours, 5 hours, 10 hours, and luckily it was cold in the room. We opened all the windows. It was February, and we kept his body, nice and cool. And we took, the whole from like 2:45 in the morning to like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We spent just there in the room with him, saying our goodbyes, just sitting there, just shocked, and then we picked ourselves up and we kept moving forward, even if we were a complete mess, and we were all a complete mess for that whole year, 2020. So the unexpected comes, it knocks us down, but we got to get back up. We got to get back up as soon as possible and keep moving forward. Um, it doesn't. I'm not saying don't cry. I'm not saying don't have bad days. I'm saying keep moving forward. You know what I'm saying? Um, Too often, there seems to be people out there who, and they don't necessarily mean wrong, but like they can be a little like, get over it, get over it. You'll never hear. I will never tell someone to get over it because obviously I've been there. I am there. But even before, I would never tell someone to get over it. But once you know what it's like, to lose someone so unexpectedly, and you know, you can have bad days. You can cry um, until you have no more tears left to cry that day, and still pick yourself up and keep moving forward. So by no means, am I saying don't have bad days? Just make sure you keep moving forward, even in those bad days. Um, these situations in life, they cause intense pain. It can be pain. Sometimes you cry so hard it hurts, right? It hurts your chest. I know I've been there. Causes tremendous heartache. Uh, you know, Complete shock, stunned. You know, Understatements. These are all understatements, right? Overwhelmed with grief, overwhelmed with your circumstance, whatever it may be. I tend to focus on grief. Why? Because I know a lot about grief, but there's all kinds of circumstances that can cause us to feel overwhelmed. You can feel overwhelmed in life because of debt, because of with the way things are in the world right now, with inflation and gas, and you know it's like everybody's, this causes an overwhelming feeling of stress. People are, you know, maybe hours are being cut. Maybe you've lost your job. You've been laid off. You've been let go. You've been furloughed. You know, all these different terms they have for it. And your circumstances causing you to feel overwhelmed, and it's causing you to feel like a victim of your circumstances. As children of God, we are not victims of our circumstances. Now, I'm going to start. We're going to be going through Hosea tonight, So we're going to be starting off in Hosea chapter 1, verse 1. And we'll be skipping through. We'll be reading, like long portions, but we'll be jumping through Hosea tonight. And it says in Hosea 1, verse 1, the word of the Lord that came to Hosea, the son of Beeri, in the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah, and in the days of Jeroboam, the sons of Joash, king of Israel. Let me go into Hosea's wife and children. I probably should have left off verse 1, but all those names. But now we go into verse 2. We find out about Hosea's wife and children. When the Lord first spoke through Hosea, the Lord said to Hosea, go take yourself a wife of whoredom and have children of whoredom, for the land commits great whoredom by forsaking the Lord. So he went and took Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, and she conceived and bore him a son. So we see in these first three verses, mainly in verses 2 and 3, that the word of the Lord came. It came to Hosea, and he told him something very interesting. Very shocking. Go take yourself a wife of whoredom. In verse 2, it says, go take yourself a wife of whoredom and have children of whoredom, for the land commits great whoredom by forsaking the Lord. So, it's not necessarily that this wife of his that God was telling him to take was a prostitute, but she was definitely an unfaithful woman, and God was going to use this example of his marriage as, what did it say there in verse 2? For the land commits great whoredom by forsaking the Lord. So he was going to use Hosea as an example. He was going to use Hosea's marriage as an example. Your wife's going to be unfaithful to you, and just like they are unfaithful to me, just like the people of Israel are unfaithful to me. And that's a very odd thing for God to tell anyone, let alone a prophet, right? Very interesting. And we see in verse 3 that so he went and took Gomer. We don't see an argument. We don't see a question. So he went and took Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, and she conceived and bore him a son. So, he started having children with her, just like verse 2 talked about. Go take yourself a wife of whoredom and have children of whoredom. And he was doing this. God was having Hosea do this to make a point. To make a point. He's using Hosea's marriage to make a point. Your wife's going to be unfaithful to you, just like the people of Israel are unfaithful to me. Hosea was a prophet in the northern kingdom of Israel between the years of 755 BC and 715 BC. So he was a prophet in the northern kingdom of Israel. And this was an odd thing to ask a man to do, obviously, right? This is extremely odd. Why would God tell a man to do this? And, you think of the shame, you think of the embarrassment, you think of, what it had to have felt like. But yet he's going into the marriage knowing all this already. It's not like, he married his high school sweetheart and she's the love of his life and, everything's going great. And then, the enemy comes into the marriage and causes, her to step out on him. He went into this marriage completely aware of what was going to take place. And it's a very odd thing for God of all people, right, to ask any man to do, let alone a prophet, one of his own prophets. I'm going to use your marriage as an example, and this kind of example. It's like, wow, that's really trusting God, because you can imagine how much, how uncomfortable that may have been, had to have been, not may have been, but had to have been, for Hosea the prophet, to know. I mean, yeah, he knows what's coming, but still to have to deal with it. Just imagine how it is nowadays, right? I'm sure they still gossiped then. I'm sure they still, whispered, when he's walking through, like, oh, that's Hosea, his wife's Gomer, and she's with another man. They all knew, they all knew what was going on, and especially the other men, So very odd thing for God to ask Hosea to do. And then we go to Hosea chapter 2. Like I said, we are going to be just kind of skipping through the first couple chapters. I see I put Hosea's. I typoed there. Hosea chapter 2, verse 6. It said, and we're going to be reading verse 6, 7, 8, and verse 13. It says, therefore I will hedge up her way with horns, and I will build a wall against her, so that she cannot find her paths. She shall pursue her lovers, but not overtake them, and she shall seek them, but shall not find them. Then she shall say, I will go and return to my first husband, for it was better for me than now. Verse 8. And she did not know that it was I who gave her the grain, the wine, and the oil, and who lavished on her silver and gold, which they used for Baal. Baal is another god that they were worshiping. And then verse 13, and I will punish her for the feast days of the Baals, when she burned offerings to them and adorned herself with her ring and jewelry. So we see that he, if it sounds like it's kind of going back and forth, it's because it is. It's like, he's using this marriage, he's using Gomer, the woman, and he's using this marriage to Hosea to, it's an example of Israel's unfaithfulness. It's an example. Okay, I will build a wall against her, so that she cannot find her path, and then she shall pursue her lovers but not overtake them, and she shall seek them but not find them. Then she shall say, I will go and return to my first husband, for it was better for me than now. So we see the comparison. He's using the situation, Hosea's situation with his wife, and he's comparing it to the unfaithfulness of Israel. So that was Hosea chapter 2, verses 6 through 8 and verse 13. We see Israel's unfaithfulness is the example God is using Hosea to show. He's using Hosea to show this example, to make this point. It's like I can't say it enough. What an odd and uncomfortable thing for God to ask someone to do, especially one of his own prophets. What a terrible circumstance, Hosea is in. What an embarrassing circumstance. Hosea is uncomfortable, awkward, when he has to walk through, and these men who've been with his wife, you know, what a terrible and uncomfortable circumstance to be in. uh, Baal, Baal is, I mean, master, owner. The Lord is supposed to be this to us, but they were serving Baal. They were worshiping Baal. He was their master, their owner. And this is what the Lord is supposed to be with us. Wealth, relationship, power, status can control us and take our affection away from God, obviously, right? Our wealth, talking about, and forgive me because sometimes I do get a little confused on, say, did I touch on this last Bible study or is that the next Bible study? Because, I'm always, several ahead, ready to go. And I've developed this, like, schedule, I guess you could say now, like Tuesdays and Fridays. That's when I schedule my Bible studies. So I'm like, and these Bible studies definitely do all go together. Why? Because if you've been following along, I'm in this book, 30 Life Principles by Charles F. Stanley. I'm past the halfway point now. So that's why they all go together. And sometimes I'm like, man, did I sounds familiar from the last Bible study, or maybe it's the next one, because I'm, that's just, my routine. I'm like, oh, which one am I doing this time? Because I'm always like two ahead, and it may have been the last one. But our wealth that we, attain here on earth, for those of you who are wealthy, not us, though I'm not wealthy, but I'm not poor. But I'm definitely not wealthy in the world's eyes. But, for those that are wealthy, your wealth can take your affections away from God, right? We can, like I believe I said in the last Bible study, we can forget about God. People in their prosperity, people in their success, financial success, can tend to forget about God and not understand and lose sight of the fact that it's because of God that you are in the situation, the blessed situation that you are in financially. And, wealth can cause people to forget about God. Relationships, I know that was in my last Bible study, can cause people to forget about God. You get so wrapped up in your relationship with someone that you tend to forget about God. Maybe they're not into God the way you are. They're not into church the way you are, and they start pulling you away because more often than not, it doesn't go the way you had planned. You're gonna date this person and bring them to the Lord, knowing you're unequally yoked, and more often than not, that don't happen. The opposite happens. So relationships that we're not supposed to be entangled in can cause us to forget about God. Power, the need for power, can cause us to forget about God. The need for control, the need for all this. We want control of our lives. We want to accomplish all the things that we want to accomplish, whether or not God wants that for us or not. Well, this is what I want, so this is what I'm going to go after, whether God likes it or not. And that can cause us to forget about God. And when you do that, you will run into a lot of opposition. I'm not saying that you won't eventually get what you're seeking, but you will run into opposition. It won't be as easy. Why? Because you're going against God's will. And I know a thing or two about that. So, I know from experience. And then, status can control, status, all these things can control us, wealth, relationships, power, earthly goals, our will versus God will. All these things can control us and take our affection away from God and cause us to serve these things, to worship these things. These are the things that become idols to us in the 21st century. Our career, our relationships, our marriage, our family, our children can all become idols. Some people may be like, wow, that sounds wrong. No, you understand what I mean. Obviously, our families, our marriage, our children are extremely important to us, but we can't put that before God to the point where, oh, I've got no time for God. I've got no time for this. I got no time for church. I got no time for this because I spend all my free time, on vacation with my wife, on vacation with my children. All my free time is devoted to my family, and we start worshiping our lives. We start worshiping our hobbies, our families, and and then everything's out of order. Everything's out of order. If you put God first, He takes care of everything else. He will make plenty of time, for you to, enjoy your family and be a family man, be a family woman, and all those things. But yes, those things can even become an idol when we place anything that we place before God becomes an idol. I gave the example in Sunday school a few months back to one of the young boys. He asked a really good question, and I basically said, he asked me like basically like, how do you put something before God? And I said, well, and he's only 10 years old, and he asked me this, and I go, well, what's your dream car? And he said one of them, like a Lamborghini or a Ferrari or something like that. And I was like, all right, so you're 10 years old, you want a Lamborghini, that's your dream car. So you when you go to college, you you just are like a bookworm. You're like study, 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 straight A student. Your whole 4 years of college, you've got because why? Because you want to get that degree for that career that you want to get. That's gonna pay for that dream car, right? And during your 4 years or however many years of college, you have no time for God. You stop going to church the second you turn 18 because you've got no time. And now mom and dad can't make you anymore, so you're all about school. So your school is an idol because of it's a means to an end, right? You're using that to get to your dream car, right? So you finally get it, but what now? It's not enough. Now you need that dream home. Now you need that dream home in another part of the country, in another part of the world. And it's never enough. The more you achieve, the less you're satisfied when you are in that kind of world. When you're in that kind of you know way of doing things, it's never enough. It's never enough. You think, oh, when I get to this point, I'll be satisfied. And then 20 years later, you look back and go, wow, I got to that point 20 years ago and I kept going. I was never satisfied. That's how, something can become an idol and we can put it before God because it takes us down a whole other road, a whole other path where we wake up one day in our 50s and our 60s and we're like, wow, where did life go? And all these things that I've accumulated have no value because I can't take them with me to heaven. They don't get me into heaven. I've heard people say they want to be buried in their Rolls Royce. I've heard people say they want to be buried with all their money in their coffin. And I'm like, well, that is just the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And that just proves the point. So that's how you put something before God. Anything that you put before God becomes an idol because it takes the place of God, takes our affections away from Him. And then we're still in chapter 2, right? Yeah, we're still in chapter 2. So we pick up in uh, verse 14. Verse 14. Did I put that one in? I'm really kind of confused here. Hosea chapter 2, verses 14 through 20. No, I didn't. So I'll read it right here. Israel's unfaithfulness is punished in this chapter. And we see in verse 14 through 20, we see the Lord's now mercy. It starts off with Israel's unfaithfulness is going to be punished. And then we get to verse 14 and we see that the Lord's mercy now is on Israel. It says, therefore, behold, I will, excuse me, got dry throat right now. I will allure her. Therefore, behold, I will allure her and bring her into the wilderness and speak tenderly to her. He's talking about Israel, right? The Lord's mercy on Israel. Verse 15, and there I will give her vineyards and make the valley of Achor a door of hope, and there she shall answer as in the days of her youth. as at the time when she came out of the land of Egypt, when he's going back to when he took them out of Egypt in the first place. Moses, let my people go, part the Red Sea, all that. He's going back to that. He's talking about that. Verse 16, and in that day declares the Lord, you will call me my husband, and no longer will you call me my Baal. So we see the comparison between Gomer, the wife, and Israel. He's like, and in that day declares the Lord, you will call me my husband, and no longer will you call me my Baal. So we see how he's comparing, the marriage of Hosea and Gomer, and that unfaithfulness and the unfaithfulness of Israel by serving the Baals. Verse 17, for I will remove the names of the Baals from her mouth, and they shall be remembered by name no more. And I will make for them a covenant on that day with the beasts of the field, the birds of the heavens, and the creeping things of the ground. And I will abolish the bow, the sword, and war from the land. And I will make you lie down in safety. And I will betroth you to me forever. I will betroth you to me in righteousness and in justice, in steadfast love and in mercy. Verse 20, I will betroth you to me in faithfulness, and you shall know the Lord. That was Hosea chapter 2, verses 14 through 20. So in the beginning of chapter 2, we see that their unfaithfulness is going to be punished. And in 14 through 20, we see that the Lord's mercy on Israel. And we see the comparisons. He's using Hosea and Gomer's marriage as an example of Israel's unfaithfulness. Gomer was unfaithful with other men. She was cheating on Hosea, and Israel was unfaithful to God by worshiping the Baals, worshiping other gods. So, God is sovereign. Everything that He touches in our life has purpose. Okay, so everything that we're going through, all these unfortunate circumstances that we are dealing with, are for a purpose. We're not going through these circumstances, whatever they may be, for no reason. There's always a reason. Nothing is without purpose. We are not victims. There is a point. There is a point to it all. Avoid being bitter. Avoid falling into resentment. It's not easy. Not easy. By no means am I saying it's easy. I'm saying that we need to do all we can to avoid falling into bitterness, falling into resentment over the circumstances that God is allowing in our lives. Yes, He is allowing it, but no, He is not allowing it for no good reason. Everything that He is allowing in our lives, He's allowing for a reason. There's a bigger picture. Okay, there's a bigger picture, and we need to try to see that. And how do we see that? By reading His Word, being in constant prayer, being in constant worship, and just pray, worship, read, repeat, in any order. Just those three basic fundamentals right there, and just repeat those. And you're going to have many days where you're just like, man, God, I really don't get why you're allowing this to happen. However, I trust you. I know you are going to work this. You're going to work this out. You're working on my behalf. I got to remain, I got to trust you. I got to remain focused. And I know it's all going to work out in the end. I don't like it. It's okay to not like it. It's okay to get frustrated, but we can't stay in that state of mind. We've got to avoid the bitterness, avoid the resentment, understand He is in control and He is allowing it for a reason. And understand that His love don't change. His will for you is good and it's great. Okay, so I just can't stress that point enough. Whatever you're going through, whatever circumstance you find yourself in today, or whatever circumstance you found yourself in the past, or whatever circumstance you find yourself in the future, it is all for a reason, and it's to build you. It's to build your character. It's to make you stronger. You're going to come out stronger for it. And I'm reminded of the movie Remember the Titans when I say that. They go to camp, right? It's a movie about racism back in the 60s, right? The 60s, T.C. Williams in Virginia or West Virginia, I think it's Virginia, and What is they go to camp, and they're black and white, and the walls come down. They bond at camp, and they're playing in the season, and they're facing other racist teams. They're now a team. They're undefeated. Black and white. They've come together. They're seeing past their differences, and all these things, but they're facing opposition, right? Their camaraderie that they've built is being tested by outside circumstances that are going on in the community and in the world, in the United States at that time. And they're being tested, right? And he says, I think it was, I don't know if it was Denzel or one of the players who says, we're stronger for it. I think there's two scenes like that where the players call a meeting, and then later on, Denzel says something in the locker room. I'm gonna have to watch that movie later on tonight again. But we're stronger for it. We don't got to deal with what other teams got to deal with because they're all white. They're all white teams, but we don't got to deal. They don't got to deal with this race thing that we deal with here on our team. But we're better for it. We're stronger for it. He's saying because we've come together and we've grown from it. And what is it? They're being tested by outside circumstances, that are trying to tear them down. But they're stronger for it. So all the things that you feel are tearing you down in life, all the outside circumstances that you have no control over, you're better for it. God is making you better for it. God is making you stronger for it. There is a purpose. I promise you. Don't trust me, trust God. I promise you. Everything that God has allowed to happen in your life and everything he's going to allow to happen in your life is for a good reason. You're supposed to learn something from it. So learn the lesson the first time. Don't take years, and 100 times to learn a lesson that we could learn the first time. And now we're going to close in kind of closing. Hosea chapter 3. Like I said, we're going to skip through it. I've got two other verses after this, but we're going to close out Hosea with chapter 3, verse 4 and 5. We see that bring it back up here too. Hosea redeems his wife. I'll start in verse 1 so you don't get confused. And the Lord said to me, Hosea is talking, go again, love a woman who is loved by another man and is an adulteress. Remember, in chapter 1 he uses the word whoredom. We're many led to believe that she was a prostitute. Doesn't necessarily mean that. She was an unfaithful woman, all right? And the Lord said to me, go again, love a woman who is loved by another man and is an adulteress, okay? Even as the Lord loves the children of Israel. So we see that comparison. God is using this extremely odd and uncomfortable illustration in real life for Hosea, Go again, love a woman who is loved by another man and is an adulteress, even as the Lord loves the children of Israel. They were adulterous, right? Worshipping the Baals. Though they turned to other gods and loved cakes of raisins. So I bought her for 15 shekels of silver. He's buying his wife back. And a homer and a letek of barley. Verse 3. And I said to her, you must dwell as mine for many days. You shall not play the whore or belong to another man, so will I also be to you. Okay, so he's saying, you're not going to play the whore no more. You're going to only belong to me, like I only belong to you. And then we get into verse 4. I know it's strong language. Some of you out there might be like, whoa, but this is the English Standard Version. For the children of Israel shall dwell many days without a king or prince, without sacrifice or pillar, without ephod or household gods. Afterward, the children of Israel shall return and seek the Lord their God and David their king, and they shall come in fear to the Lord and to his goodness in the later days. Isaiah 3, 4 through 5. But I ended up reading, the whole chapter because Hosea chapter 3 is only 5 verses, right? So, one of those short chapters. So we see there that Hosea redeems his wife and God is going to redeem the children of Israel. We see this comparison throughout the story of Hosea. And we see it very uncomfortable, very very awkward. I can only imagine. I can only imagine. So in closing, the last two verses that I have, for you, this is a little bit different. This Bible study, and me, I can still stretch it out, but I only had one. When I say one page of notes, when I only had one page of notes, you should see what my normal notes are. But you know me, I can always stretch it out. So we close with two verses. Romans 8:28. It says, reading for the book real quick, your sovereign God has determined to use everything that happens to you for your blessing and his glory. So he is determined to use everything that happens to you for your blessing and for his glory. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. So we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good. So whatever you're going through today, is going to work together for your good. It's actually a blessing. You're going to come out stronger for it. You're going to come out better for it. So, and we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good for those who are called according to his purpose. And now we go to Hebrews, Hebrews chapter 12, and we're going to read the first three verses. Hebrews 12, as I cheat again in my Bible app, I'm getting lazy. Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. Verse 2. Looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. Verse 3, do not grow weary. Consider him who endured from sinners such hostility against himself, so that you may not grow weary or faint hearted. So, to endure, keep your eyes on Jesus. We are to endure. We are to keep our eyes on Jesus. Verse 2, it says, looking to verse 1, let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. So we are to endure, and we are to set our eyes on Jesus. So that was the Bible study tonight. God has a plan for everything. God has a plan for everything that you're going through, and everything that you're going to go through, and everything you have gone through. I know it's difficult. Trust me, there's many times where I've been like, was this really necessary? Did it have to be this way? Did I have to lose my father? He's only 67. I could really use his advice right now. Was this really necessary, God? I have those thoughts so much over the past 2.5 years. Was it, you couldn't have done it another way? It's almost like Jesus in the garden, saying if there's any other way, and clearly there was no other way. He knew what was coming. He's going to die on the cross, and even Jesus himself was like, if there's any other way, can we go that route? But there was no other way. That was the only way, and he did it. He went through with it for us. Died on the cross for us, and it's like, so I asked God quite a bit, like, was this really the way it had to be? Couldn't you give me another 5 to 10 years with my dad? And right now would be, sometimes I think like, dang man, it'd be really cool if we were both ministering together, man. How awesome would that be? After all the years of me, wasting so many years, if we were ministering together right now, how awesome that would be. And every time I go to the ranch and I take my son, I think of how I should have went more with him. And I think, man, my son went to the ranch with my dad more than I went with my dad, because I remember back then I'd actually get annoyed because the drive out to the ranch is very dangerous. Highway 18 out there in the Center Valley. It's a there's a lot of death traps out there in the high desert. 395, Highway 18 out there. A lot of, and recently, fatal accidents. One way going to trucks, and people getting impatient and going around and causing a fatal accident. I'm just going to say this: is most of the time it's not the truck driver's fault. I'm not trying to defend truck drivers because I used to be one, but and they get on my nerves too. But um, most of the time it's not the truck driver's fault. And it cracks me up every time I say right away, "Oh, all the assumption," and then we find out it was the impatience of someone. I'm extremely impatient, but I don't do those things because it's not worth it. There's been a lot of fatal accidents. One last week out there in that area, and my son used to go with my dad more than I did, and I'd be like, man, God be with them because they're so dangerous and coming back at night in the dark, and it's like you're out in the middle of nowhere. But I'm like, man, how great would it have been, if I'd have gone with my dad so much more to the ranch, and how great would it have been, and now my son went with my dad to the ranch, and now my son goes with me to the ranch during the summer because he don't got school. But it's like, how much greater would it have been if I could be ministering with my dad right now? So it's like we have questions for God. It's okay to like question, but don't question in a way like where you're angry. Don't question in a way where you think you know better than God. You always need to come back to this realization that you know best. God knows best, even though I don't like it. That's keeping it real. I'm keeping it real. Like, it's okay to not like the way things are going, but always, always come back to the fact that, hey, God, I'm keeping it real with you right now, God. Plus, He knows your heart. He knows your mind. I don't like what's going on, but I trust you. We can. I believe we can be that way with God, not disrespectful, not rude and all that stuff with God, but like, God, I don't like what you're allowing right now, but I also, I don't like it, but I know that you're up to something much bigger than I understand, and I'm gonna trust you. So just trust God. It always comes back to trusting God, right? Very cliche, very basic. Trust God. Trust God. The circumstances that you're dealing with are for a reason. He isn't just ignoring you. He isn't just getting a kick out of watching you squirm. No, there's a very great purpose behind this, whatever you're struggling with in life right now, whatever circumstance you find yourself in. God has a reason. God has a purpose, and everything is by design. So that's just me trying to beat a dead horse and really drive home the point. But I thank you guys for watching. Like I said earlier, if you've noticed, I've kind of developed a schedule. Tuesdays and Fridays. I announced a few Bible studies back that in the month of September, I'm turning this into a family thing, not just a me thing. It started as a plan, an idea for my dad, and then he passed away, and then God showed me it was for me, not for my dad, and now God has shown me it's no longer just for me, it's for my family as well. So my son, he makes my intros, um, so he's part of the channel. He's gonna be doing more things because he's the tech guy at 12 years old, and and starting in the month of September, my mom's gonna be speaking on Fridays. I will continue to speak on Tuesdays. Um, like I said, when mentioned it like 4 or 5 Bible studies ago, I'm not taking a break. You know, me, I'm not gonna take a break. Um, but I've been doing Tuesdays and Fridays, and we're gonna stick with that schedule, Tuesdays and Fridays. But my mom is gonna do Fridays for the month of September, then Faith in October, Angel in November, and then we'll go from there. And I'll be doing Tuesdays. So I thank you guys for watching. Um, you know, the first Friday of September. My mom will be taking over. Um, this is the Friday Bible. This is my last Friday Bible study for a while. So yeah, my mom will be taking over September on Fridays, and then Faith, October, Angel, November. So I thank you guys for watching. Um, listen to my mom. My mom's, got a lot of knowledge. She's spent, over 40 years, in church. She's not that. Everybody thinks my mom is this probably this little quiet lady, and my mom's got over 40 years, and I always like to say, if one person, if only one person was going to heaven, it'd be my mom, because even before she was a Christian, I mean, she had. I say, man, you have no past. You have no. I always joked that I had no testimony, and boy, do I have a testimony now, unfortunately. But my mom has no testimony. My mom, she's probably laughing right now, face laughing. My mom has no testimony. I mean, the Bible says nobody's good, right? But man, if anybody was good, it's my mom. So, but don't let her fool you. She's not this weak, timid little lady. Man, my dad made her a bulldog, made her a pit bull, and she's been saved for 40 years. So she's gonna be taking over Fridays in September. So listen to my mom, and you'll probably be less offended when you listen to her. But I love you guys. Thank you for watching. God bless you. See you next time.